Okay, hello everyone. We're live, and I need to get the speaker sorted out, which obviously should have done beforehand. Never mind. People can wait. Okay. Okay.
I have a mic. Who's got
Great.
a mic? Oh, it's on.
Yeah. So we're all there. Yeah.
Hello.
We've got the mic working. We've got everything working. Okay. But this live.
It's probably just like insane. People are watching.
It's not lots, but it's better than nothing. Okay. Well, it makes it four more than we've got in here.
Yeah.
Wait, I think I had the. Okay. Right. Brilliant. So hopefully I can just check that we've got it. Brilliant. Okay. You can see that we're actually streaming. It's quite fun to see that.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
It's going
There's
out.
a bit of delay.
There it is.
Perfect.
Yeah. A little bit delayed, but it's actually going out. So it's working. Okay. Yeah.
Soulday.
Oh wait, I might as well check that the sound is actually working. And that's the only other.
Is there a screen with we see ourselves on there or avoid windows?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's going
There's
out.
a bit of delay.
There it is.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh wow. How are you? It's also
Yeah.
an audience. Yeah.
Oh, terrified.
Your nose is on the screen.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we're working. Yeah, thanks everyone for coming.
Yay.
Yeah,
Thanks
so-
for having us.
Yeah, it's great to have a full house. Yeah, as I said last time, one of the good things about having a small space is that it's a lot easier to fill it. I think I'm going to say that joke every time.
It works.
You said that.
Yeah.
I said I think it does. And it does work. For those of you on the stream who haven't joined before, or who have joined before, thanks again, or thanks for the first time. Tonight, the structure of Soulday Thursday is as follows. It starts with a 30-minute talk. Tonight it's going to be about the Odyssey. And then we've got a 20-minute musical performance by Tom Hopton, who is a violinist, and he's created a piece where he's played the violin and looped it into something rather magical. So I'm really excited to premiere that tonight here with animated visuals by myself. I've indulged this evening. I'm doing the talk and the animation, which is much fun. And after that, there's then going to be a discussion amongst the people here in the room about the themes in the Iliad. And whilst we're talking, we're going to have animated visuals created by Angelica Lena, who is an Italian artist and also the art director at Sentio Space. She is very talented. She has a great understanding of colour, and I think you guys will enjoy that aspect. So we'll have visuals plus the audio from everyone here. In terms of who we've got here in the room, we've got Jamie Beviano, who I know through London's partying scene, as well as Bristol's partying scene, and he runs a pop-up company called Take Place, which
Table and Candle, but yeah.
Table and Candle.
Yeah.
I met him when it was Take Place, and now it's Table and Candle. It's not the first time I've made a mistake on introducing someone this evening. So we've got Bertie Cleese, who I met from Bristol. He's an engineer. He's working at Tala. Eleanor Di Baccelli, who I used to live with, and she works in events. Then Isabella, who is a photographer, and then Rosa, who I met in Istanbul, and she is an academic. So I've got everyone. I've got everyone in the room. I think it's going to be a really good evening. And yeah, I'm looking forward to moving through. But without further ado, into the talk, the Odyssey, a 10-year journey home. For those who weren't here last time, and that's everyone here in the room, the Odyssey is part of an enduring story. So in 1300 BC, we had the Trojan War, which is believed to be an actual war that occurred. And about 600 years later, Homer writes the Iliad about the Trojan War. And the Trojan War is a fight between the Greeks and the Trojans, and it goes on for 10 years. Ultimately, the Trojans lose, the Greeks are victorious, and one of the characters in the Iliad is Odysseus. And he then spends 10 years getting back from Troy, you can see, to Ithaca. But rather than taking the direct route, he faces many, many trials and tribulations. And that story is told by Homer in the Odyssey 25 years later. So the first is a group quest, the second is an individual quest. Following on from that, we've got Aristotle, who writes his Poetics in 330 BC. And in that story, he's talking about how to write a good story. And he's criticizing and leaning on Homer's Odyssey and the Iliad. And he's also talking massively about Sophocles' Oedipus Rex. And that's going to be the topic of the next Soulday Thursday. And we've got the Aeneid, written by Virgil in 30 BC. This was written in Latin, whereas the Iliad and the Odyssey are written in Greek. And it signaled a shift in power between the Greeks and the Romans. Virgil was using the Aeneid to help establish Italian or even Roman culture. And in that, the character Aeneas is from the Iliad. So he's one of the Trojans who are defeated, and he leaves, and then he goes to ultimately set up Rome. So still seeing this story continuing. And then we've got Dante's Divine Comedy, and this was considered to be one of the major texts of the Italian Renaissance, partly because he chose to write it in his local dialect, Tuscan, and lots of other artists chose to write in their local dialect rather than writing in Latin. And in that, the protagonist takes the Aeneid with him down into the underworld. So again, it's a follow-on story. Paradise Lost, Milton, power is shifting towards the British Empire. And in this, he's structuring his book in the same way that the Iliad and the Odyssey, and indeed the Aeneid, is structured, where there's a power struggle between two sides. But rather than looking at the Trojans and the Ithacans, or the gods and the mortals, which is how the Iliad and the Odyssey is structured, for Paradise Lost is a battle between God and Satan, between good and evil. And then finally, we've got James Joyce's Ulysses, which T.S. Eliot cites as being the best modern book ever written. And Ulysses is a translation of Odysseus, but a translation from the Greek as opposed to a translation from Latin. So we've got this story that travels all the way through time, right up to the current day. And for anyone who does stick with Soulday Thursday for the whole of the first season, they will have a broad understanding of how the Western imagination has evolved from how it was seen by the Trojans and the Greeks, back with the Iliad and the Odyssey, right up to the current day. It's a very exciting story. I have to confess, I haven't yet. I'm reading the Aeneid. I haven't yet read the Divine Comedy, Paradise Lost, or James Joyce's Ulysses. So I'm very much on this personal adventure myself. And as it goes, I'm researching and I'm studying, and I'm doing my best to share some of the key points. The Greek imagination, key themes. This is a bit like what happens. This is like a recap on the last episode, previously on Soulday Thursday. These themes seem to be the most interesting, or at least those which the audience found most interesting. So first of all, fate and destiny. We tend to assume that fate and destiny are two of the same thing, but they are distinct concepts. And you can see this by saying he met his fate, and then comparing that to destiny. She pursued her destiny. With fate, we don't have freedom. It happens to us. Whereas with destiny, we have freedom, and that's where we have our free will and an interplay between good and evil. Second thing to note is there's a dual reality, the gods and the mortals, and they interplay throughout. And the gods themselves sit below good and evil. It's not that the gods do something and therefore it's good. The gods follow what is good and bad, and then they act accordingly as guardians of right and wrong. And then finally, Hades. Once you've endured your challenging life, where you've encountered fate, you've made decisions as to which destiny you wish to pursue, you then have to combat the mortals and the gods, and ultimately you go to Hades, and everyone goes there. It's not much fun. You're disembodied. There's no judgment. There's no heaven and hell. And so that's a basic construct for how the Greeks saw the world and the life that they had to live, which will become clear and clearer even as we move through the Odyssey. Starting with a summary, it's not a spoiler to give an introduction to the Odyssey and say what happens, because for all of the Greeks, this was mythology. Everyone knew it. It's just that Homer told the story really, really well. And so now I'm going to tell a quick summary of the story. Odysseus is returning home, as I've already mentioned. Athena, the goddess of wisdom, will help him. She's been chosen to help him because she's the most strategic, as in she is the one who is the best at coming up with strategies, as indeed is Odysseus as a mortal. Telemachus is his son, Penelope is his wife, and they're both at home waiting for him to return. But whilst they're there, they are facing strife in Ithaca, where he is king, or at least he was king whilst he was there. And the strife that they're facing is that there are 100 men all trying to take Penelope's hand in marriage. And they're there saying, look, Odysseus has been gone 10 years, he's clearly dead, marry me, and let's, by the way, get rid of your son Telemachus because he's not as great as Odysseus and you're going to have a better son with me or a better daughter with me. So that's the strife that they're facing. Odysseus goes on this huge journey, and then when he gets home, he can't go and face these 100 suitors because he will be overcome by their power. So he uses trickery. He disguises himself to get close to his family and to get close to his suitors as a beggar. And before going straight into the palace, he meets his son Telemachus, and he devises a plan for how they're going to overcome these suitors. And the plan, broadly, is that they go to a banquet with Odysseus disguised as a beggar. And when they're at the banquet, they ask some of the servants to hide all of the spears of the suitors and lock them away, lock the doors. And then Odysseus and Telemachus go on a killing spree, and they literally decimate like 100 suitors, which is one of the criticisms of the Odyssey. And Odysseus himself is that he's too brutal. He doesn't show much mercy. And one of his character traits is that he's much enduring, he's ever suffering Odysseus. And this much enduring, ever suffering, these words constantly come as you're reading it before anything that he does. And it's this idea that he was born much enduring, he was born ever suffering, as opposed to Achilles, who was born quick-footed, he was born the strongest and the fastest. And whilst also being much enduring and ever suffering, he's also many-minded. He's a man of deceit, he's a man of cunning. He can't use his strength to overcome the 100 suitors, but he can lock away all of their spears and then overcome them through trickery. And this is perhaps summed up by his genius in inventing the idea of the Trojan Horse. Most people will be familiar with the idea of the Trojan Horse, but just to briefly summarize it, after this 10-year war, still the Greeks haven't managed to overcome the Trojans. And so Odysseus says, look, why don't we give them this beautiful horse? And so they give this huge horse. The Trojans aren't sure whether to trust it, but they look at the beach and all of the ships have disappeared. So they believe that the Greeks have sailed home and given up the fight. They take this huge horse into Troy. Who's inside the horse? 50 of the best Greeks who come out of the horse in the dark of the night, open up the gates, the ships have come back, Troy is destroyed. So he's got that as his sort of pin-up story, and it's a classic. Everyone knows it even now, 2,500 years ago, 2,500 years on, which is fairly impressive. And here I've chosen a few words that I think sum up the story. It's about adventure, it's about endurance and survival, it's about schemes in order to bring about that survival. It's about loyalty, family, and glory. And glory is something that's in both of the stories, and so is adventure. Moving on to more themes, chaos eternal. We know in the Iliad, where there's a 10-year war, that to expect lots of chaos because it's a war. But what Homer chooses to do in the Odyssey is to say, well, yes, there's chaos at war, but there's also chaos at home. There's no safe space. there's been no authority at home, and as a result, there's carnage there. And this is a truth that is universal, I would say. And anyone who's done any gardening or tried to keep a tidy room or a tidy kitchen will know it only takes a few days of neglect for chaos to engulf. The Iliad's hero is Achilles, and he's the greatest, he's the strongest. It's quite straightforward in that sense, and because he's the greatest and the strongest, he doesn't need to use any trickery. But Homer's chosen to bring a new hero into play here. Odysseus, he's one amongst many. He's more of an ordinary man, and he uses his intellect to get around the suitors, to get around all of the problems and trials and tribulations that he faces throughout his journey. But both of them promote mastery through adventure, and both of them believe that glory is a fundamental aim to have throughout their life. But they've got different ways of bringing that glory about. So Achilles, he can't return home and have glory. He has to die. He's given a decision. Either he can go and fight against the Trojans, he'll die in battle, but he'll be the victor and he'll be celebrated as the victor, or he lives and goes back to his father, but he doesn't have glory. So he chooses glory, he chooses death. Similarly, Odysseus, he has to get home. He's been the inventor of the Trojan Horse. He wants everyone to know about it. He wants to get home. People go, oh, Odysseus, many-minded Odysseus, ever-suffering Odysseus. But if he doesn't get home, he won't have that. So he has to survive. Some of the values that come through the Odyssey. So starting with Aegisthus, this is linked to the idea of destiny, how we can choose our destiny, and that we ought to choose a path that is good, as is in accordance with the Greek. Whilst Lord Agamemnon is away in charge of the Greek army, he seduces Penelope, who is Agamemnon's wife. And then when Agamemnon gets home, Clytemnestra, who is Agamemnon's wife, and Aegisthus kill Agamemnon. It's an absolutely brutal story. I mean, the guy's been fighting for 10 years. He gets home, he gets killed by his wife. Quite extraordinary. But here we've got a couple of lines. Your crimes are bound to catch up with you. Bad deeds don't prosper. It was not Aegisthus' destiny to steal Agamemnon's wife and murder her husband. We warned him Agamemnon's son, Orestes, would take revenge. And Orestes is Agamemnon's son, as you can see, and he chooses to avenge his father. He kills not only Aegisthus, but also his mother in the name of his father. So here is this idea that destiny is in your hands. Fate you can't control, destiny you can, and you ought to try and pursue a good path, because if you don't, you will be avenged and you will meet a darker path. And there's a story here about Telemachus. He is the son of Odysseus. It's not been easy for him because his father has been away for 10 years. He needs to try and find out whether he's ever going to come back. So he goes on a quest. And whilst he's on that quest, he meets Menelaus. Menelaus is Agamemnon's brother. And it's Menelaus who has Helen as his wife. And Paris, who is a Greek, Paris, who's a Trojan, goes to dinner with Menelaus, and he ends up seducing Helen and taking her home with him. And that's why we have the entire Trojan War. Menelaus goes to his brother Agamemnon, look, my wife's just been taken. They take the entire army for 10 years to get Helen back, and they're ultimately victorious. So there's a message there that says, don't take someone's wife because you'll bring ruin to your entire family and civilization. And then Menelaus, when he meets Telemachus, he says, you have, after we've dined, we shall inquire who you may be. Bring your best hog, I'll slaughter it for a guest. All his life, a guest remembers a host who's treated him kindly. And this theme comes up over and over again throughout the Odyssey, the idea that you ought to treat your guests with facility. And again, that's a universal value that lives on today, not just in the West, but all around the world, which I find very interesting. And so hosting is rewarded. Moving on to the underworld. This was the first time that the underworld had ever been spoken about in literature. There's never before this been an elucidation of what might happen after life. And Odysseus goes down to Hades, as already mentioned. Everyone goes there, and it's not much fun. As Achilles says, it's where the dead live on as if mindless, disembodied ghosts. And we have no bad men being punished. We only meet famous people. And there aren't many monsters. And what's interesting about this is that the Christian imagination with heaven and hell was built on top of this imagination, and they developed it further. They said, okay, there is this afterlife, it's disembodied, but let's try and bring this extra angle where we say, if you behave well, you go to heaven, you behave badly, and you'll go to hell. But they didn't have this, and the Christian critique of the Greek imagination is that it's too basic. Whereas when we fast forward even further to a modern current, which is atheism, atheism doesn't believe in an underworld, nor does it believe in ideas of heaven and hell. It strips it right back. So it's actually a much more simplified idea of reality than both the Greek, the Roman, and the Christian imagination. Whilst we're in the underworld, Odysseus meets Achilles, and we have an interplay here between the two heroes. Odysseus says, you must enjoy ruling the underworld. And Achilles says, no, it's absolutely terrible. And Achilles is frustrated with Odysseus, because he knows that Odysseus knows that it's not much fun living in the underworld. But Odysseus is saying it because he's duplicitous, he's trying to come up with some kind of good idea, it's not so bad, at least you're the ruler. And Achilles is thinking, no, I'm not that kind of guy, I just say it straight, I think honesty is the best policy. So these two different ways of being a hero. And the other theme that's brought up in the underworld is faithfulness. So we meet Lord Agamemnon, we've spoken about what an awful time he had. And he says to Odysseus, how perfect was your faithful Penelope? All the while he's been away 10 years at war, 10 years trying to get home. And Penelope is at home coming up with ideas for how she can put off these suitors who want to take her hand in marriage so that she can wait for Odysseus to make his return. Meanwhile, Clytemnestra, according to Agamemnon, has destroyed the reputation of her sex. It's very strong words there. I mean, there are lots of men who are doing misgivings, and no character says, oh, he's destroyed the reputation of his entire sex. And it's lines like this that give writers like Simone de Beauvoir, who's one of the foundational feminist authors, the fuel to decide to write a book like The Second Sex, where she says one is not born but becomes a woman. You don't have to take the reputation that is given to you by Agamemnon and many of the other authors that have come through the Western tradition. You can be who you want to be. And then we've got Tiresias. This is the final character in the underworld. Well, there are many others, but who I find interesting. He's androgynous, he's blind, and he's prophetic. And I am slightly overrunning here, but the story that isn't included in the Odyssey, but is interesting, is that Hera and Zeus, Hera, Zeus's wife, are having a debate who enjoys sex more. And Zeus says women enjoy sex more. Hera says it's men. Neither of them agree. They then go to Tiresias, who's being both a man and a woman. Tiresias says women enjoy it 10 times more than men. And Hera finds that pretty outrageous, so she makes him blind. Zeus is well chuffed, so he gives him prophecy. And what I think is of note is that Homer has chosen to make an androgynous man prophetic. And I think the reason why he's doing that is he's saying that in order to have true wisdom and prophecy, we need to have a combination of both the masculine and the feminine worldview. And then the blindness is a nod to the idea that what we see is not necessarily the truth. There is a depth, and that theme is brought up again by Sophocles in Oedipus Rex, where the prophet there is also blind. He can see whilst no one else can. After many trials and tribulations, Odysseus returns back to Ithaca, but he's still not the ruler. He has to overcome these suitors. And he, first of all, has to meet Telemachus, and Telemachus has not been having a good time. He's had no father because Odysseus left while his wife Penelope was pregnant with Telemachus. And as a result, Telemachus' character is undeveloped. He hasn't been able to become the man that he needs to become in order to justify being the son of Odysseus. And here, this is a nod to the idea of education through role models. It was deemed that in the Greek society and to Homer's imagination, it was very important to have characters that one could emulate. And those characters had a responsibility on their shoulders to behave in a way where it goes, do as I do, behave as I do. And that is still important now, but there is also an emphasis today since Romanticism and its evolution to teach oneself. And it's just as a quick aside, many of the Romantic heroes are orphans. So Coleridge and Wordsworth, two poets who founded the Romantic movement, were both orphans. And then if we look at some of the characters in today's films, like Harry Potter, he's orphaned. Frodo Baggins, he's orphaned. Batman is orphaned. So there it's more an idea that one learns through oneself and you are your own arbiter of right and wrong. Whereas here it comes from the generations from before. Then we've got Eumaeus, and he is a swineherd. He looks after the pigs. And Odysseus goes to him first, and he's disguised as a beggar, and he's being helped in his disguise by Athena. But Eumaeus doesn't ignore him. He says, any poor wanderer who comes in supplication being like being a beggar, is given a respect. And to such people, a small gift can mean a lot. And here Homer is talking about the importance of charity. And he's also saying that it's important not to judge people by how they seem, because there are many people not giving to Odysseus because he's a beggar, but he's actually the king of the whole of Ithaca, and he would remember if you gave him a small amount in that moment. They come up with an idea for how to return to the palace, as mentioned before. And as they're arriving, they see a dog, and Eumaeus goes, this dog did have a master, but it's all too plain that he died abroad. And similarly, he says, servants, when their masters are no longer there to order them about, have little will to do their duties. And here, this is partly a nod to role models, but it's also a nod to decay without authority. And I would say that this point has links to what's happening in the working world post the pandemic, where there's a decision being made about whether we should work from home or work in the office. And to my view, whilst I do advocate working from home because it offers a lot of freedom and the ability to get stuff done, and like your washing, which is what many people say, and I do think that is a key one. You avoid chaos in the kitchen, but which is great, but then you do get a bit of decay at work. Tricks and schemes. So Achilles condemns Odysseus for being duplicitous. He doesn't approve of that kind of storytelling. And the closest we have to these kind of characters today is in the Marvel universe, where we have Thor, who's most like Achilles, and we have Loki, who is most like Odysseus. And it's interesting that most people see Loki not as a hero, but as a villain. Mm. But Odysseus was definitely a hero, and there are heroic aspects of Loki. And why is it that we love him? Maybe it's because he is actually a hero, and he can't be like Thor because he's not the strongest. He doesn't even have the same father. He can't wield that big hammer. And Loki says, I do it because I have to do it. And that's the same reason that Odysseus gives for much of his behavior. Similarly, Penelope, who is Odysseus's wife, she has to deceive to keep off the suitors. She says to them, look, I will choose a husband, but only once I finish this piece of art that I'm working on. And every single night she dismantles the art and starts it again. So it doesn't finish, but her duplicity is celebrated. Athena, she says to Odysseus, you are like me. She's a female goddess. And here, this is a nod to the idea that Odysseus's virtues are feminine virtues of duplicity, and duplicity not in an evil sense, but duplicity in a necessity sense. And Thackeray, I was thinking, I need to be able to back this up by something. So I did a bit of research, and Thackeray in Vanity Fair has a line where he goes, my grandma says that all of the best women are hypocrites. And it was pretty clever for him to say my grandma says, because if he just says I says, you go, oh, man, that's a man talking. It's not him, it's one of the characters in the book. But by saying my grandma, it gives it more weight. So here it's talking about necessary duplicity. And then there's restraint. So Odysseus has chosen to disguise himself as a beggar, partly so that he can get closer to the suitors, but it's also a nod to modesty. He could go around saying that that he's the king of Ithaca and that he's the boss and that he's the guy with the Trojan horse, but he chooses to be modest. And this is a nod to Jesus, I would say, and the fact that he chooses to wear his sandals and to not be boastful and to keep his feet on the ground. And there's a moment where Odysseus does reveal who he is. He has to come up against Cyclops, who's got one eye, and he gets Cyclops drunk. And then he puts a spear through the guy's eye, and that's how everyone escapes. So again, he's using trickery. He's so proud of his trickery. He says, I am Odysseus, I'm ever suffering, much enduring, many-minded Odysseus. And then Cyclops goes, it's Odysseus. And he calls out to Poseidon, who's his father, and goes, it's Odysseus, look what Odysseus has just done. And Odysseus has still got to travel all the way across the ocean. And Poseidon is Lord of the Ocean, he's the god of the ocean. So he then has the most treacherous journey home, which he wouldn't have had if he had shown more restraint. So here there's a question, is it duplicity or is it actually modesty? And how does modesty come into contact with duplicity? Are they conflicting values? Justice and vengeance. The gods disguise themselves as strangers from abroad and move from town to town in every shape, observing the deeds of the just and the unjust. Here, this is the idea that the gods are the guardians of good and evil, and they know what just is, they know what unjust is, and if you behave in a way that's not right, they will then help you out. And here's one example. So once more, the suitors threw their sharp spears with all their might, but Athena made the volley miss. So Odysseus has locked them all in this room, but they have still got a few spears, and every time they throw these spears, they miss. And to our imagination, they miss because they're not very good at throwing a spear. But to the Greek imagination, it's like, oh, they miss because the gods are on their side. They're in the wrong for pursuing Penelope, and Athena is the god that's been chosen. It's very playful. So the gods are the guardians of justice. And now we look at vengeance. So the survivors, this is looking at Troy, the survivors are all carried off to work as slaves. Pretty brutal. And the suitors are locked in a room without weapons and killed, as mentioned. And then the women who betrayed Odysseus are executed. So in his household, there are many female servants who don't follow Odysseus, they follow the suitors, and they are all executed. Yeah, it's avenge without mercy. Here's what's being advocated here. It's a very different way of approaching victory to the magnanimity that is advocated in the modern imagination. Purpose and suffering. This is the final slide. One of my favorites. So we mentioned that Poseidon is the god of the ocean, and that Odysseus has been boastful, and that's why he's about to have the most treacherous journey across the sea. And there's this chapter, and it's just, you get this sense, it could be a story in itself, that it's just storm after storm after storm, and he's there on his own on this tiny raft. And after he gets all the way across, he then is faced with a huge cliff face. And he says to himself, I'm not surprised, because I am ever suffering, much enduring Odysseus. This is the fate that I have to endure. And the sea and fate in the Greek imagination are linked together, because it's a chaotic realm where anything can happen. And it's still like that today. The sea is a scary place. And as much control as you can try and have over your life, if you sail the Atlantic, there are always going to be unknowns. There's always going to be fate to face. So he's ever suffering Odysseus. And he's dealt with Circe, who has made all of his men drunk and turned them into pigs. He's dealt with Cyclops, where he's had to put a spear through the eye. He's dealt with Calypso, who is with at the beginning. She's a beautiful goddess. And he's got everything that he wants with her. She's even offered him immortality, but he turns it down to go back and see his wife and his family. And then there's the Sirens, another famous story where he's taking his men through on a ship, and they're on the rocks, and they are so beautiful at singing that they lure the ships onto the rocks. But again, he comes up with a scheme whereby all of his men block their ears, and he ties himself, or he asks his men to tie himself to the mast, and orders them to not let him be untied, even if he begs them. So he gets the best of both worlds. He has his cake and he eats it. He listens to the Sirens, and he gets through the passage. And plus, he survives Poseidon. So he deals with a lot, and that's because many-minded Odysseus prevails. But whilst he is many-minded, he still understands, like Eumaeus understands, that although he returns home, the God will give and the God will take away. I saw this line, I immediately remembered it from the Bible, like the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away, and I thought it started from the Bible, but I realize now it was certainly in the Odyssey, and it was probably spoken about before then. No doubt whoever wrote the Bible pinched it from this book. That is everything. Thank you. Okay, great. Now,
Yes,
Was it directly taking literature bits and things like that?
yeah.
Here it is.
No,
okay, so we're still streaming, and and it's good to see there's some people watching. I'm really excited to share this next section, because this is the music. Hello, Tom. So Tom is here. So now I'm going to premiere a piece of music that has been created by Tom Hobden. I was hoping to get Tom on this stream, but can't. Yeah, I can see him there. Maybe anyway, it doesn't matter. But I heard Tom play the violin at a wedding in Italy, and it was like something out of a Fellini film. It was quite extraordinary. And so when I was coming up with who to get involved on this next Soulday Thursday, he instantly came to mind, and I reached out and said, Tom, would you mind putting something together? And what he's done is he has created a looped violin piece. It's stunning. It's about 20 minutes long. And Tom himself, he came to fame by being in the band No and the Whale as a violin player and also on the keyboard. And then he developed a duo called Peter Alexander. And with Peter Alexander, they are bringing together electronic sound with classical music. It's stunning to listen to. I urge you to check it out. And then finally, he's now in a band called Gang of Youths, again playing the keyboard but mostly the violin and the viola. It's beautiful to listen to him play, and I'm really excited to share this piece. Tom has created the visuals, and we've got Tom. Brilliant. Hey, Tom.
Good. Fantastic. You hear me all right?
I can hear you. Can you hear us all right?
Yeah, I think so. All good. I think it's a bit of a delay. Yeah, it's a couple of second delay, I think, but all good. We'll try. Thanks for having me. Yeah, this piece, that was an amazing introduction. And yeah, it's a piece of music I wrote in the last couple of days that came off the back of a long album recording process with another band I'm in called Gang of Youths. So yeah, a nice welcome change from slogging it out writing pop songs. But yeah, hope you enjoy the piece. I might not watch myself play it, if that's cool. I can't bear watching myself at best of times, but yeah, enjoy.
Okay, so hopefully we're going to come back on here. Okay, so hopefully we're brilliant. Okay, should we try and bring Tom in again? It'd be nice to see Tom. I think it's fine. Okay, so hopefully we're brilliant. Okay, should we try and bring Tom in again? It'd be nice to see Tom. I think. Yeah, I'm glad we're connected to those speakers already. That's great news. Okay, I think I'm just going to share it, and we'll go for it. But we did our best with a technical glitch. But I think Tom communicates enough through this beautiful piece that we're going to play here. Okay. hopefully we were heard a bit just then when we were saying well done to Tom for his amazing performance. It's not easy to tell. I know that you guys have just been listening to music. This particular aspect technically is quite challenging. But in this moment we're now going to talk about some of the key themes in the Iliad. I'm not going to go full screen because it doesn't seem to like that. Oh, they're still not. Okay, they are hearing us now. See, that's just too loud, isn't it? On the others. So I just need to turn down. It's absolutely. Yeah, exactly. That's his way. We are getting there, guys. If anyone is actually willing to hear, then. Okay, I think we can run. Yeah, I think we can. I think we can do it now. Yeah, I think we have to unfortunately have this screen in the background. That seems absurd. I know we can do it like that, and then I do it like that. There we go. That's not so bad. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, in the there's quite a few themes that come up in the Odyssey, and I'm trying to find one to kick it off. We were already talking about how ridiculous it is that the Bible came after the Odyssey, and we know who wrote the Odyssey, but we don't know who wrote the Bible. But in terms of finding a path for just to kick off this conversation, I think that it's quite interesting how Odysseus is a hero who doesn't use the truth. He often lies to get his way, and what I'm wondering is whether honesty is actually the best policy, whether people here would rather have honest answers, whether you'd like to know exactly what's happening, or whether you'd rather someone occasionally tell you a slight fib in order to protect you from the truth.
Or protect themselves from the truth, or protect themselves from what's going to happen. You said there's like a sense of necessary duplicity. I guess that's like the other way of looking at the truth, because you just know the truth is just not going to be in your benefit or in your aid,
unless you're duplicitous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, because one of the things that I've got a friend whose his whole thing is that he's always like absolutely truthful, but sometimes it's too much. I was on holiday with him, and he said to me, "Oh, by the way, you're the most unaware of self person I've ever met."
And you really wish that he hadn't.
Well, I just thought that was a bit harsh. I didn't need to know that. I didn't need to.
Did you not though?
No. No, I didn't.
Is being tactful duplicitous? I don't know if it is.
Yeah, but it's not being fully. I suppose it's holding back the truth.
Well, that's a little bit different though, because compared to Odysseus, I feel Odysseus is quite self-serving with his duplicity. He's always to like save himself, whereas that was just a bit mean. So I think there's a difference. I'm not sure your friend needed to say that.
But you think Odysseus is alright?
Well, no, if he's self-serving, which he is, clearly.
Then you forgive him.
No, I'm not sure I forgive him.
Yeah.
Sounds like a bit of an idiot, to be honest.
Maybe if you're misrepresented, or you know you're going to be misrepresented, then you're duplicitous so that you avoid that misrepresentation. Then that's maybe the kind of like necessary duplicity in your.
He was doing it for a reason, though, wasn't he? He was on a mission. He had to do certain things in order to achieve that mission. So it's not really about morality at that point. He had to survive.
Survive, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that would be his point. Yeah, I think it's kind of I felt it a bit with furlough at the moment. Whether or not it's fair, whether or not it's right to claim furlough.
Okay.
And then these questions over people are on furlough but they're still working for their company, but they're not meant to be working for their company.
We've got a lot of support for the dishonesty coming from us here. It's like, duplicity has many reasons to engage with it.
Well, mainly in his context. I mean, he had to survive. Obviously, it's justified. You couldn't turn around and say the truth because you would have got killed, on the spot. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of like the whole Achilles' point of view, where he just says the truth. He's the most powerful. It's kind of like there's a story about Augustus is one of the emperors of Rome. They say that he was stabbing everyone in the back until he became the ruler, and then he became kind. But it's like it's a privilege. It's a bit like being generous is sort of a privilege. If you have, if you've got exactly. If you've got the cash, it's a lot easier to.
Or if you can be honest, but no one can attack you for it, then it's also a good show of power.
That's true. Yeah. Well, yeah. Achilles can say what he likes. Yeah.
If not, he'll snipe them.
Exactly. You didn't like the idea that glory is what we should strive for.
No, I think I have a problem. Well, no, because glory is fine, but you said if you had to have ultimate glory or ultimate happiness, what would you go for? And I said definitely happiness. And I think glory. Well, you said that you thought that people would think that glory meant happiness.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So anyone that chose glory would be because they think deep down it means happiness.
That it would bring them happiness.
Exactly.
Probably what.
Obviously, if they're being cast as opposites, then you're probably right. Obviously, you choose happiness.
I don't know. I don't know.
What is glory without happiness? Surely.
Yeah,
It's like, I won.
Yeah, you get remembered.
Rubbish.
You get remembered as having been victorious.
Yeah, lasting reputation. I guess.
Yeah, that's what.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah,
That's true. Being
Well,
forgotten is a big human need, isn't it? Like we don't want to ever be forgotten.
Also, happiness is something that it's a state of being that occurs for a while, but it's not something that endures.
Why not?
No, you said it would.
Yeah, but I'm not
It's
going to.
the choice.
I think it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, exactly. I hope for it as long as I'm alive. Then that's fine.
Yeah, you're happy to have the happiness and then of your life.
Then be off. Yes.
Also, maybe enduring glory is different from glory. You can fall from glory, so you could. Yeah, so it's not necessary. It's not. You might have to change that to being remembered as a glorious.
That can change too.
Yeah, because falling from glory, but that's what happened to Agamemnon. He was glorious. He defeated the Trojans, but then when he gets home, his wife is with someone else.
But he's still got glory, hasn't he? Because he's still achieved what he's achieved.
Was he called the worst of all?
Yeah, it's not ideal. It's not ideal for him. Yeah, he's not happy.
He's not happy, but he's still glorious.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know if he's
I don't know.
glorious
When I hear like he did have glory, definitely at a stage, but I just don't think he's going to be remembered as glorious Agamemnon. He's going to be remembered as Agamemnon, his wife.
His wife ran off with someone else.
Ran off with someone else and then killed him.
There's no glory for the other guy, but there's happiness.
The other guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other guy has short-term happiness.
He got killed though.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
He got killed.
Yeah, justice was served.
Yeah, short-lived happiness.
Short-lived happiness or short-lived glory.
No, I think glory lasts for longer than happiness. I reckon.
Yeah.
Although obviously when you're glorious, you feel happy for a while. You know, that can be, like a glorious victory. You have that feeling of happiness. Happiness is what most people seem to aspire to today. You know, like, I just want my kids to be happy. You never hear people say, I just want my kids to be glorious. You never hear that now, but that's what they would have said.
To be glorious is more like
true.
being proud of yourself than being happy, I guess. No?
Yeah, because pride is very different to happiness.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that is more of like a recent change from the idea of like having your children grow up to be like proud and glorious to just being like, actually, let's redefine that to happy, and that's like, or satisfied.
Satisfied, I think, is different though. I like satisfied because you can be really unhappy but satisfied.
Can you?
Can you? bit low
I-
effort.
Oh, satisfied with past achievements, but now you're
No, like
Or
you
connect with
could,
your
you could be like
control.
you're building your house, but it's pouring with rain,
You're miserable.
and you're miserable. But I'm building this great house.
I'm
You
not
know,
sure.
so you're satisfied with your progress, even though.
See, I'm not sure that if you were satisfied with your progress, that you would be miserable. I think there's a certain happiness to be derived from any kind of satisfaction.
But you're casting happiness as like a very immediate thing.
So you're saying that would just be happiness anyway.
Even if it's pouring rain, you can still be happy.
But Odysseus, when he's stuck on this raft, and he's just seen all of these cliffs. I don't think he's seen it, but he's got enough purpose to get home.
Yeah.
He's satisfied with where he is at that moment. He's thinking, well, I've already overcome lots of trials and tribulations. I'm going to have many more, and I'm going to keep going. Because he's got purpose. His purpose is that he's going to get home. His purpose is not that he's going to be happy. If his purpose was happiness, he would have stayed with Calypso.
Do we know he's satisfied here though? I'm not sure he's satisfied yet.
Okay, you're right. He's not
on the
fully
path of-
He's
satisfied.
at the foot of some massive cliffs.
He's not fully satisfied, but he's striving towards satisfaction.
Or glory.
Or
No,
glory.
he wants to get home to Penelope.
He does, yeah, so that he can have happiness. Yeah.
Or so you can talk about the Trojan Horse and have glory.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So,
But we probably would have spoken about the Trojan Horse even if he didn't make it home, because it was such a good story.
Yeah.
It was written down in other stories. as
Yeah.
well.
Also, I didn't know that Odysseus spent 10 years getting home. I didn't know the Trojan Horse story. I didn't know that it was Odysseus who come up with it.
I didn't know it was Odysseus either.
No. I wasn't even 100% convinced that it was Odysseus. I'm pretty sure it is.
I'm not 100%.
Yeah, no, it is Odysseus' idea.
I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, if it's not Odysseus, it's the kind of thing Odysseus would do.
You just stood up there and told us lots of rubbish.
Well, it's funny because you should end up saying a few things that are wrong. Yeah.
Who,
did, yeah.
What, today?
Not today, but you end up looking back and actually,
Uh,
not sure I agree with you. But then I'm sure if Homer were alive today, you'd disagree with some of the things that he was saying.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that is very true.
He would.
Yeah.
I didn't quite understand Simone de Beauvoir.
Well, the reason why I was bringing that up is that after the last one, a friend sent an article about how the women of Troy aren't given enough respect, and their story needs to be retold. And I as a justification to myself, I thought, well, it's still worth reading these books and reading the male stories rather than cancelling them, because when you read that, it gives fuel on the fire.
There's quite a lot of books about the women of. I mean, there's like 2 novels come out recently about women.
Exactly, yeah. Circe reimagined. Circe reimagined.
And then there's one sort of about Achilles as well.
Well, he's been reimagined.
Women around Achilles, yeah. So it's happening.
It is, yeah. There's so many. Yeah, exactly. That was another thought I had. I was like, there's loads of people coming out and telling those kind of stories, but there's very few people telling the original story.
Thank God you're here to talk more about a discussion.
Which I think is worth telling. Yeah.
I had a question about Achilles and Achilles not liking the idea of ruling the underworld, and yet he was just fully committed to dying and was just like had no route back. Whereas Odysseus was like, I can't die here. I have to travel back. But it's fine. The underworld is going to be absolutely fantastic for you. And I wondered if that was like part of it. It's just like the guy who made peace with passing to the underworld was like realizing it was going to be a struggle. And Odysseus was like, no, it's not going to be a nice place out there.
Achilles was saying, no, oh, wait.
Achilles was like accepting he was going to go down, and Odysseus was like wanted to get back to his wife at all costs.
Yeah, well, he's also the only one who's returned, which is quite interesting.
Thomas is commenting here some interesting things. I might be wrong, but doesn't Odysseus know that he's going to have to leave Ithaca again and die somewhere else to race us? That's a pretty different spin on what's unfolds.
Yeah, maybe just deploy the Homer to listen to his next tale. I don't actually know. Yeah. I think
So he doesn't go back and stay there. Is that it? He moves. He has to move on again.
Oh, I see. He's been told by Tiresias that he's going to have to leave Ithaca.
It's his fate or something.
Yeah.
His fate is to move
After he
on.
returns,
Yeah.
everything is.
So then he wouldn't be satisfied to get back. He'd be like, "This is terribly sad."
Yeah, maybe he has been told that. But he still wants. Yeah. I don't know, Tom, is the answer. Maybe it is. Yeah. Maybe it is a ploy for him to listen to his next tale. I do think it's interesting that he chose to make it about Odysseus in this one rather than a great man, rather than Achilles.
But it wasn't like a story from Homer. Like, it's not that he wrote it. It was said in and many times, like orally, for people. So he's not the one who made up the story. Homer.
That's true. That's true. He didn't make it up, but he
It
did
wasn't
choose.
enough.
He did
Chose to
choose. He
focus.
chose to focus to
Yes.
shine a light
Yeah.
on Odysseus.
Yeah.
In
definitely,
the
yeah.
end of his life, whereas at the beginning he's choosing to make the focus about just this like more straightforward superhero.
Is there like a modern day Odysseus in like a film? You know,
Loki, really.
Loki, okay, I've
Yeah.
typed in watch
Oh,
Marvel, yeah.
He's a Norse god, isn't he?
He's also a Norse god, yeah, but
I
he's
don't
seen
watch
as a
Marvel, yeah. It's
he's
Marvel.
seen as a villain, trickster.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
Okay, so
Yeah.
Yeah, stop!
yeah
Not for me.
yeah interesting. Yeah, because there is what is interesting is that he dips into Calypso. He also dips into Circe. He does well. He takes pleasures. He takes pleasures, but he doesn't stay with the pleasures. He does ultimately leave each time. He leaves.
Oh, what
Calypso.
does that mean,
What?
though?
Bands
good or
that
bad?
leave.
He is away for like over 10 years and he's tired and
He did that in 7 years.
Well, Calypso is a goddess. You know, she's offering him eternity. She's offering him eternity. He turns that down,
Do you know what?
which I think is quite good.
Penelope and-
7 years? He's had 7 years with her.
Yeah.
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 You turn it down when you get it off with once. You're like, I'm gonna turn it down. 7 years of shagging, and then like,
He realised it wasn't a permanent.
yeah. Like, listen, I'm gonna turn you down.
Is he actually the 7 out of 10 that he's taken to?
I trust Tom. I'm sure.
7 years and he's on a lovely Greek island, just having a lovely time. And there's all these it's presented as these massive travails and this long journey to get home, and actually 7 years he's having best
Got
time
bored
ever
of
with
it.
a
Got bored
goddess.
of it.
Also, the other thing that slightly brings
7-year crisis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's literally.
the other thing that slightly brings him into question is that all of his men die. When he gets back, it's
he's touching my arms.
Tom is not a fan.
yeah. Well, Tom obviously ascribes to more rigid, ethics, because Odysseus is quite slippery, and once the Romans had arrived, they didn't respect this kind of behaviour. Yeah, and Tom is definitely on the side. Tom, by the way, did the music. He's on the right
So
there.
is Odysseus alone on this raft?
He was alone,
his-
yeah, but
all his
there's a
mates
moment
died.
where Athena, or one of the goddesses disguised as the bird, arrives and gives him a bit of comfort.
And they've all died, so all of his friends.
All of his men have died, which I do think is quite interesting. And also, there's that moment where he's the only one who gets to be strapped to the mast to listen to all of the
Sirens.
all of the sirens.
And he's probably the only
You
one.
know, it could be
who
like,
fits those islands.
guys, 3 of us are going to strap. We'll draw lots. It's going to be me, but maybe 2 others. Like, no, just me. The rest of you guys aren't going to have access to this truth. So that having his cake and eating it is quite cheeky.
How complete was his knowledge of sirens? Because I thought there was a risk you just lose your mind.
Well, he probably felt that he could deal with it because he's a trickster. I'm not with Tom. I'm not with Tom.
Of course you're not.
No.
He thought there was a couple of years of fun to be had to be
Yeah,
Sirens.
2 years with Calypso, 7.
Yeah. Well, I think that
Had my fun with Calypso. Maybe I could get a couple of years fun with the Sirens. Then I'll carry on home.
but life was bringing these opportunities into his life, and it also does make for a good story.
Yeah, better story than if he was like, no,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
no.
Well, yeah, it would have been. There would have been no story if he just travelled from
2 weeks.
No, there have been these Cyclops story. And which ones are the other majors? Like we have
Trojan.
Sirens, we have the
Trojan Horse.
yeah.
He did. Surely he deserves some credit for the Trojan Horse.
Trojan
No,
Horse,
definitely.
obviously.
Yeah, that's absolutely mega.
No, it's-
And but I think the kind of guy who comes up with the idea of the Trojan Horse is probably going to be the kind of guy who does end up spending 7 years with Calypso, because he can come up with a justification somehow for doing it. Because they do say that there's a relationship between perceived notions of immorality and creativity, because people come up with ideas to justify their actions, where other people, sort of trickster ones, like Odysseus. But yeah, it just depends on how you want to see it. Yeah, I'm still an advocate. I'm still an advocate of Odysseus.
So your glory over happiness as well.
I'm suffering over happiness. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because I feel like happiness is quite easy. I feel like you can, anytime you want to sit back and relax, that's a feeling of sort of happiness to
More
me.
for you when you're 99 and you look back on your life and think, I'm suffering, and you've got a happy time.
No, because I feel like a lot of things, like even putting this thing together, there's been some really happy moments, like when Tom sent the music and I listened to it, I thought, wow, that made me feel really good. I was joyful, I suppose, for a moment rather than happy. But the majority of the experience has been like either anxiety-inducing, incredibly stressful, like feeling of like sort of whether it was actually going to pull off, like smallness and all of these kind of fears that you have when you put yourself in front of a crowd. But it's worth it for me because there's a purpose. Something is coming into being, and it gets.
I don't
created.
think happiness is about not doing anything, like relaxing. I don't think that makes people happy at all, even in the short term.
I don't think you'd have felt the happiness if you didn't have the suffering
gruel,
to
yeah,
go with it,
yeah.
struggle.
I don't think that's the definition of happiness. It's doing anything.
Yeah,
It just might seem like it after a long time.
Yeah. Then you get it for a moment.
I guess the problem is I feel that suffering is the opposite of joyfulness, which is the word you just said. And they're both kind of quite extreme. You can't really sustain either of them. They're both sort of short-term, like spikes. Whereas I like the happiness is the underlying bit.
Really, because I see suffering as the baseline.
Really? I mean,
Yeah, I
you
see that as
suffered through making this.
Well, I mean, not like it wasn't an impossible suffering, but has been, yeah, hard, yeah. Yeah, last night I was awake at 4 a.m, so I'd done a render. Tom had sent it last night, and then I'd done a render and it was too pixelated, and I'm re-rendering now, I'm getting tired, I'm virtually catatonic. I'm thinking it's worth it for the sake of bringing it into being. But it wasn't, I didn't feel happy.
But the suffering then leads to you appreciating and feeling happiness all the more.
Also, I just see it everywhere as well. Like, I don't know, there was a guy just out here the other day, and he was trying to get to a hotel. He was staying in a pretty scummy hotel, to be honest. And I saw him, and I could tell he couldn't walk. And I looked at him, and I thought he was a drunk, just using the wall as a guide. And I realised he was actually on the edge of having literally having to go to a hospital from coughing, some kind of like bronchitis fit. And he was in his 70s, and he looked at me like, "You're gonna have to help me." And I've seen him a few times. It doesn't seem to me like he's very happy.
Yeah.
But it does seem like he's still getting some kind of meaning from life. And yeah, I suppose, I think there's more meaning found through suffering, personally, than through.
Like poor guy.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
For the
Yeah.
his head.
Okay.
The Japanese ikigai, you know, that thing, the Japanese kind of ethos of like happiness through work, and why they live so long is because every day will do the tasks that need to be done. They'll never, even into their hundreds or 90s, will always do the work that needs to be done. That's the thing that actually keeps them happy. Because the moment they break away from that and think they need to just relax that day or whatever is when it all starts to kind of crumble. Yeah, so I'm with you. I'm with you completely.
Yeah, they keep it going. I like that idea. It's like
you can call it suffering, or you can call it just work. It's just having a purpose, doing something rather than.
Or you can call it like suffering because you know that's how to lead a satisfying or happy life. And that's a bit of like a loop. Say that. You choose to suffer because you know that that's what leads to satisfaction or instantaneous happiness when you like sit down at the end of the day and like, oh, that was difficult.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, even kids, I'm sure kids, there's this idea if you have kids, it's going to make you happy, but I reckon kids are like majority suffering. Majority. I'm not saying it's not, I wouldn't want to have children, but I reckon most of the time it's like pain because it's like they're either unhappy or they're not living the life that you want them to live, and you care for their existence.
Yeah, but like paying for you to go to a good school, or trying to educate and stuff, that's suffering, and then you.
Yeah, actually, it's worth it.
So you're putting the work in, and you get the joy.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's it. It's like toiling them out.
It's like toiling
out. Yeah, reaping what you sow.
Exactly.
But sowing is not that. You're not that happy.
Sowing's not lying on the sofa, like
No, it's like proper. It's hard work.
Suffering. Yeah.
And it is. Yeah.
But if you spend your whole life sowing.
I really want to suffer. You're making it fantastic. Okay.
No, but also if something bad happens, like people, it's like when grief, you lose a loved one.
Yeah.
Like either a breakup in a relationship or a death in the family that's before it's due. Now, that is a suffering.
Yeah.
But out of that suffering comes so much meaning.
Yeah,
I think it's worth it. Than the happiness of. Yeah, this is why I get in trouble from one of my housemates because he doesn't like that I sort of slightly glorify like COVID, for instance. I find it like extraordinary that we're living through a situation where we're all encountering a shared fate, having to change our destinies as a result of it. And recently there's been some news about whether we're going to go into another lockdown. And last night I said in the pub, it would be amazing if we ended up having a 5-year COVID, a bit like World War I and II. Because to me, I was thinking, I'd like to know.
I disagree with you on this one.
He didn't like that. Yeah. It's not like I'm wishing it. Yeah, I'm just.
I think you are a little bit though.
I am a tiny bit. But I think that's like, I think that is because there's a moment in Rick and Morty where, because the scientist is a bit of a existentialist, and they are a bit dodgy when it comes to ideas of good and evil. I have been slightly seduced by their philosophy, but obviously I'm trying to bring more grounded route through this quest I'm on at the moment. But there's a moment where they've done some scientific experiment and they've caused absolute chaos, and they're flying around in a machine and there's just like murder everywhere. I mean, it's not people being murdered, but death just everywhere, and they're trying to escape. Then the scientist just takes a moment and goes, but it's just so beautiful, and he's like finding meaning in the terror.
Do you recognise yourself in Odysseus?
I definitely recognise myself in Odysseus. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, more than I do Achilles. Yeah. Because who else have we got? Like, there aren't that many other. There's Eumaeus. He's the swineherd. He's one of the characters that I like the most. The guy who looks after the animals and offers him charity, and says that it's always important to. Yeah, but I can't. I'm so different to the swine. The swineherd stays in one place and gets to know it very, very well, and he's generous to anyone who arrives, and he looks after the animals. But it's quite different to the life that I feel I live. That's more like facing the Sirens. Calypso. To me, I love that sense of adventure. Yeah, that sense of adventure. Yeah. Who do you guys feel? I mean, admittedly, I've only just briefly mentioned the characters, But in general literature, are there characters that you guys are drawn to?
I was gonna say about Homer, maybe because he wrote Ulysses when he was Achilles when he was younger, and he said the optimism, just being like, yeah, cool, I can just visualize myself as the strong, overpowering person who just like powers through everything. And then as he gets to an older person, it's like, yeah, that's not realistic. The only way I can imagine myself into a story is just by being like the clever, like deceptive person. I think that's why he becomes more interested in that character as he gets older.
Because he loses some of his strength.
Or maybe he just realizes that strength was all just illusionary at the beginning. It's just like, how can I reimagine that power?
Yeah, I think so, and I think it might be. I don't know. It's hard to talk about the gender thing though. The fact that Athena is the goddess of wisdom and strategy, and she says that he's like her, and Penelope is duplicitous, but it's a good thing. And I don't know whether when he was younger, Homer was loving the idea of being classic strongman, going out and just decimating everyone. And as he got older, he started becoming more affiliated with the feminine in his being. And he started.
He's much older when he gets back to Ithaca, so obviously he has no choice.
Yeah.
He can't really fight physically. He has to use his intellect. It's sort of like.
I think it's quite hard on Penelope to call her duplicitous, just because she's dodging these annoying suitors. Like, I mean, maybe a little bit, but
that's what we were
what she
talking
can,
about. It's
right.
like, is the word duplicitous if it's for a reason? You know, it's not. It's
but it's not even. I mean, it's not. I mean, is it I don't know. I mean,
yeah, that's the
I
question.
think, yeah, unnecessary duplicity is not classed as a bad thing. It's just
yeah, but I'm just not even sure it's duplicitous.
Yeah, but interestingly, when it is
Tom
a
is saying
when-
something as well.
I was going to ask what Tom's input was.
There must be some interesting parallels to draw from Penelope, Helen, and Clytemnestra.
Clytemnestra, who is she
All
again?
related.
Clytemnestra
Tom
is
is great.
Agamemnon's wife,
Okay.
who killed him. Helen is Menelaus's wife, and she gets taken by Paris, and that's the start of the Trojan War. And then Penelope is the faithful Penelope, who is Odysseus' wife, and she's waiting. Yeah. And I'm not actually sure how. I can see how Helen and Clytemnestra are related. I don't know how Penelope. Tom's obviously got some serious knowledge here.
Can we just bring him live? Because he clearly has something to say.
Yeah, do you think it would
Yeah,
work?
that's a good one.
See, bring him in, bring him in.
I don't know how he can.
But
He should request to be invited.
Yeah.
I think he's saying that Clytemnestra, Helen, and Penelope
Let's see
actually
if
like
we
related.
see if we can bring Tom in from
Yeah, let's bring Tom in.
Let's see if he can do
Oh,
it.
invite. You can invite people there. Can you
Yeah.
like click on his?
Yeah. I know, we don't.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
Put
No.
user in.
No, he would have to. Tom would have to join.
Message
And
him.
ask to join, and then he would. Well, he'll hear it.
Thank
He'll
you.
hear it. I think Helen and Clytemnestra are sisters, and Penelope is their cousin. So Tom, yeah.
Tom knows.
This is why Tom. That's why it's ideal that Tom was doing the music. See, there's some kind of. There's some sort of faith involved.
Oh, I think Helen and Clytemnestra are sisters, and Penelope is their cousin. Really? Okay.
No, I can't remember.
No, I mean Helen blows with the wind pretty big time, because she really does. Because she's with
The whole Trojan War.
Helen's with Menelaus originally.
And she likes it with Paris.
Then she legs it with Paris.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then she does then realise that Paris he's so handsome. But when she gets to Troy, she realises that Paris is handsome, but he's not much more than that. And perhaps she should have stayed with Menelaus. And then she ends up going back with Menelaus. And very complicated.
You shouldn't have taken a life.
He's trying to
He shouldn't have
join.
taken a
No,
life.
he shouldn't
Just
have
about
taken a
that.
life.
No, dice.
But is she not
Oh really?
considered by the gods the most beautiful?
Yeah, I don't know.
Maybe you have to select the window where you have.
She
the
was
multiple-
considered by the gods.
Yeah. Never mind. Tom's enjoying it. He's
Maybe.
alive.
That's why they
He's
he
alive.
wants to be.
Never
Yeah.
mind, as you were.
Yeah. Tom, did you study ancient Greece or something.
Classics, Tom.
Did he do I think he did do classics.
Classics.
I think he did classics at UCL.
No,
I think that
you're gonna go to the toilet.
I think that might be why he's got some of the knowledge.
Not just pretty plays.
No. So he's a consummate professional.
Boy, fair. He's actually more qualified than all of us in that as well.
Yeah, brave.
Well, that's the thing. Tom is more of an Achilles character. He's like, no, I am the best man. You know. Too honest. I know.
Too honest, Tom.
I know. But he can be. You know. He's like, I'm the best violinist.
Oh, he's saying A levels. I mean, that's good memory. We all did.
It's incredible.
We all did A levels.
Yeah.
That was ages ago.
Yeah. Well done, Tom.
Well done, Tom.
Yeah.
What else are you going to trump us on? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. The other thing that was mentioned that we haven't spoken about is this. The question that I was interested in is whether or not you should give to beggars on the tube. So here the story is very much like anyone who comes as a supplicant should be given something, because a small amount can mean a lot to someone in that situation. But if you read the big issue, you're told that you're not meant to give to homeless people because they're going to use the money to spend it on drugs. Just a marketing campaign for the big issue.
Very smart. Very smart. Just give your money to the big issue is what they're trying to get at. So I wouldn't trust that.
Do you know, I'd never read it like that. I had never really formed an opinion.
Why would I really? On what? On the big issue?
No, not on the big issue. Just like I'd heard stories that any money you give to a homeless person would be better than given to a charity or given to a big issue. I'd always thought, it's like, is it true that so many homeless people are just like flagrant addicts?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like that's so obvious on the street.
Yeah.
But maybe if this is like the professional opinion, I should give my money to a big issue or to charity. But I'd never really been, 100% convinced each way.
Yeah.
That was interesting that you just like read it in that way, and that's like,
Well, I was kind of.
oh, okay, yeah, because
I was kind of semi-joking. I'm the same as you, where I actually would just I'll just read the person that I'm dealing with in that moment and trust my judgment of that person to be like, I know if I give this person 10 quid,
Right.
and he's saying it's for a hostel, that it will go to the hostel versus this other person who I think it will go to drugs. And these generic these generalizations of like never do this or always do this. It's like really. It's really designed for people who aren't able to make that assessment.
Yeah, it would be nice to have it either way, because it'd be nice to 100% trust people, or to 100% know for your own like peace of mind. I just give it to an organisation.
Like they're a single species of, they are literally
that's very
hundreds
true.
of thousands of these people, and some of them have become homeless a week ago because and I bought a guy a train ticket for 35 quid, or it was a bus ticket to Birmingham. And he explained why he needed to get there, and I just went with him to the cash point. He explained everything to me, and I was like, I trust that he's actually going to use his money to go back to Birmingham to where his family are tomorrow, versus someone else that says, oh, I need money for a hostel or whatever, and you're like, mate, you're gurning. And like,
Right.
you might need it for a hostel, but I also think you might give this to a crack dealer.
Right.
And so just trying to lump it into one single approach is ridiculous to say homeless people as if they're one homogenous species.
yeah.
I don't know if that answered what you were
No, I
asking
agree.
about.
I do think it's circumstantial. Yeah, you need to make a judgment call in that moment.
I think it's quite depressing, the idea that you should just donate to charities instead, because I think that for a start you've got to
Pay the corporates.
that, and also I think like everyone's just got to ease into the fact that you're going to sometimes make mistakes. So you might sometimes give it to someone who's going to go and spend on drugs, but so what? Because actually you will also maybe give it to someone who actually really needs it, and that's great. And I think that kind of personal connection is quite important. And if you're funneling everything through something else, as in charity, I mean, I don't know, I just find it quite depressing to think of a society that doesn't that creates this barrier between people who have no home and then everybody else, and you're like you're actually also creating this barrier where these annoying announcements on the tube that are like, don't give your money to the, the beggars. I just think I hate it. I think it's horrific and not very humane, actually. I think if you see people that you think, are in need, you should just give them your money.
Even if I was walking up a street,
even if they want a beer,
and they like, look, can I just have £5? I just want to get a hit of opium.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? Because you've been so fucking, so straight. Achilles would have really approved of that.
Yeah.
Approved of the honesty. Like Odysseus would have like spun a yarn.
Yeah, but that person, exactly. They should carry on suffering for a bit more.
I mean, it's difficult, but like nobody's gonna get it right.
Depends on each individual.
Yeah, also trusting some like third party in an office 100 miles away to judge who is the best person to help you. I don't know how you decide that's better than chatting to someone on the street and having a connection.
Yeah.
I had a moment during COVID where I was getting the tube to South London, but there was no one on my entire carriage or even on either side. And then this homeless guy walked through the doors in the middle and entered, and he was wearing no shoes and he just had blood all over his feet. It was like something out of a horror movie. And he came up to me and he asked me, whether I had anything. And because I was actually going to a stop motion animation set, and I was bringing, because it was for a gin company, I had some gin and I had some fever tree tonic.
God, I know where this is going.
Yeah, and I'm not giving him the gin because I do actually need to give this to the people who are working on the film. But I will give him a fever tree tonic, and it was like something out of a movie, like one of those Coke adverts, because he just stood there and he just literally necked an entire fever tree tonic in one with his like blooded feet. He's just like absolutely loving it.
He got nothing from that.
He got happiness for a moment.
What, from just the tonic?
Yeah, he did.
Really
It was sparkling.
It was sparkling.
Yeah.
Fever.
Yeah, it's also really nice fresh coffee. Yeah, which I think he enjoyed.
And so, hold on, what? And you didn't give him the gin because you had to give it to your. Like you were going to go and.
I'd been given the gin and the tonic by the client.
Yeah.
And told to take it to the team working on the project so they could have something.
Yeah.
So they had straight.
Yeah. So they.
That's strange.
Yeah. That was enough tonic.
Okay, good.
Yeah, to give a little bit of tonic. So yeah, I gave him the tonic. Yeah, the other theme that is mentioned that I think has relevance today is the idea of decay without authority. So Odysseus hasn't been at home, and as a result, similarly Agamemnon hasn't been at home. And the question of whether or not we should be working in the office or working at home, and I briefly sketched out the idea that if everyone's working from home, then there's no one there to encourage them to do the work, and productivity will decline as a result.
It's the quote, like the servants won't have a direction, or what was it?
Exactly. Yeah.
What other examples are there of that in life? Decay without authority.
Well, anarchy, I suppose, would be like some people would say anarchy has decay without authority, and I don't know. It's a difficult one because if you don't have, if you work from home, then everyone working from home has more authority over their own home.
Exactly. Yeah.
So then they can do the washing up, and they can.
Yeah, it depends on the definition of authority.
So chaotic kitchen is kept under control.
Exactly.
But their work life suffers.
Yeah, as a result.
Does it though?
No, it's
doesn't
not
really.
It's not really.
Because if
Like,
you're
as long
at the
as you
office,
have it, you need to give results on something. Either you give the results or you don't. It's not
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
You work if there's
If it
someone.
decays, then you get fired, basically. Yeah.
Exactly.
The invisible strings of authority and like a system are still there.
Yeah.
They're just more virtual than they are sort of hard when you're at the office with a person watching over your shoulder.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to bend the rules. if there's no one there to watch.
It
depends on your management. If you have like good management, then the incentivization is just to get your work done, and if you can bend the rules to go and do your washing, then fantastic. Because you probably pick time to do that when you're like
there are no rules, because it's saying the only rule is that you have to do the work, and if you don't, you still get fired. So in a sense,
I think like jobs like where you had to go to the office and just for being in the office, that was your job. Like do not exist anymore. Like, I think I don't know, maybe back in the days, you could go to work and as long as someone saw you at the desk, they were assuming you were working. And now I think with deadlines and tasks and stuff like KPIs.
Yeah. There were no offices back in the Greek times. Everyone worked from home.
they're on Zoom.
Yeah.
And they just had immaculate kitchens and
They're
did
not
nothing.
working from home. They're working from the war zone.
And that's because they have to be together.
It's all very much service.
Yeah.
Like true.
The people, if you're going to war, you have to be.
But the war, are like,
You have to go
key workers.
You have to go to work there.
Key Greek workers.
God bless their kitchen.
Yeah, the key workers can't work.
And the rude Greek drivers.
Yeah. So maybe again, it's.
So basically, if you're a key worker, you should watch out because your wife is getting seduced by 100 other guys back home.
Well, I mean, she was the queen, so it was a desirable.
But you're
A
managing
desirable lady.
A desirable lady.
It's so
Power.
extreme to have 100.
But that's how hot she was.
Yeah, but also that's how faithful she was too.
Yeah, not a single. Maybe they're all rubbish though. They sound a bit rubbish with their spears and like assistants. And she's like, I need to make my art.
It's amazing that she waited so long to, and she still had this faith in the fact that her husband was going to return. She had no sign of it, and I don't know. Was she speaking to the gods, or did she have an oracle?
Maybe she had
I
an
don't
oracle.
know.
Yeah, who was her
Calypso?
Calypso?
Yeah, maybe she
Oh, 7 years, he didn't really count for anything.
Yeah. Yeah,
that guy. Yeah.
I guess he did hang around for a long time. I did say
Had it
come in
been
a
the
couple
other
of
way
times.
around, do you think Odysseus would have given in and just taken on a
Let's
wife?
finish my painting for the day.
100%.
Yeah.
Calypso and Cersei beat Testament.
Well, he
He would
definitely
have taken on a
taken
wife.
in the meantime.
Not like a mistress. Like, or do you think he would have taken on a semi-official
Greek
mistress?
mythology
Yes.
handies.
Well, I mean, wife woman,
Yeah.
I do. There's no chance that Odysseus would have behaved like them.
No, there's no chance.
He wouldn't have.
No.
That's a very good point, yeah.
Well, because Odysseus would have.
Oh no, he might have talked like he behaved like that afterwards. He'd have been like, oh, 7 years, that's nothing. I've been waiting for you here
So
for
we
10
think
years.
maybe just the storytellers weren't with Penelope, and actually she was having dalliances left, right, and
That's what we were
centre.
just thinking, yeah. I finished painting for today.
Yeah. Come on, guys.
Come on up.
Also, Odysseus is a storyteller. He probably would have slightly spun a story
Embellished,
that worked in his favour.
Yeah.
When he got back, he'd be like, oh, I overcame Calypso, she was well up for it, but I wasn't.
I turned her down. I turned her down.
Then the Sirens, they were seducing me, but I got straight through them.
Didn't strap myself to the
It's really hard.
mast.
I only gave in for 7 years, then,
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Not 8 years.
It's also reminding me as well, because there's a moment where he is spending time with one ruler, and he's sitting there as the beggar, and someone there tells the story of the Troy, and Odysseus goes, oh, tell the story of the Trojan Horse. And so this guy tells the story of what happened. Obviously, he's talking about Odysseus. Odysseus is sitting there thinking, I love it, but he's actually crying because he's so sad about all the women that have died. But he killed them. Like Odysseus, yeah, he brought it about. So he's a complicated character. he is a complicated character. Yeah, he's a trickster. Yeah, he's crying, showing remorse, or showing some kind of guilt, perhaps. And again, justifying it because he would say, I had to do it. I'm not sure how he'd say he had to sleep with Calypso.
For
Yeah,
7
it's a
years.
different kind of pity
Right,
you can
that's
have
fair.
with Penelope if 7 years of that 10 years were actually not him striving to get back, but him just jaunting about, having a great time, and then making the journey back. So if you frame Penelope as having this like time waiting, like honestly waiting for him to come back, and it's all very commendable. Everyone waiting and him striving to come back. There is a 7-year period where she's waiting, and he's just like, yeah, I'll deal with. I'll make that an importance later. That's my priority later. Oh, here we go.
Nice, that's it.
Yeah, he loves the women. He does. He loves the women. Yeah. Also, he doesn't get on very well with Achilles. It's interesting because Achilles is the best man.
What was Achilles up to?
Well, Achilles was in the underworld. Mind you, Achilles was not up to.
Did he ever miss his?
Well, Achilles. The reason why Achilles is in the underworld is partly because in the Iliad, they've sacked a town, and as a result, they get the women as their spoils. But Agamemnon, the king, takes Achilles' lady. And Achilles is really frustrated. He's like, I'm the best man. I'm the best warrior. What are you doing taking her from me? And Agamemnon says, well, I'm the most powerful. I'm your ruler. I should have her.
Yeah, he doesn't even fit it.
Look at him.
Achilles must think Odysseus is such a dick.
Yeah, he does. Achilles will look down on Odysseus.
Big time.
Yeah. Achilles will look down on Odysseus. Yeah. Yeah. But it's
Achilles, Brad Pitt, and so, yeah, fine.
Achilles has got it pretty easy.
Yeah, fair enough.
What would you
Odysseus is the guy from Lord of the Rings who is a traitor. Boromir. I've forgotten his name. Sean Bean, yeah.
Really?
Odysseus is Sean Bean. A very Sean Bean character.
Really?
Yeah.
What as in Lord of the Rings is derived from?
No, just Sean Bean is the actor who plays Odysseus in Troy.
And he also plays
Boromir and in both times it's a very frail man because he succumbed by power in Lord of the Rings, and then obviously in this one he's
but in Sharp, he's good all the time.
well, Sean Bean's more like Achilles.
He's much more of an Achilles.
Yeah. I think Achilles is who we aspire to be, but Odysseus is more realistic.
Yeah.
There are no. Also, Achilles' biggest problem is his pride. He looks down on Odysseus. He thinks he's the best man. He refuses to fight because Agamemnon's taken his gun. As a result, the Greeks are losing in the war. And then Patroclus, who's Achilles' best friend, comes up to him and he goes, look, all the men are dying. I'm going to go. Can I borrow your armor and fight on your behalf? And Achilles goes, yeah, you can borrow my armor and fight on my behalf. Patroclus then gets killed by Hector, who's the best man amongst the Trojans, and it's after that Achilles decides to go back to the war, and he has that choice he has to make about whether he's going to fight and die or live and be quote unquote happy. So he's a proud man, because that's the problem being the best man. It's like Cristiano Ronaldo is the best man, although Cristiano Ronaldo is also incredibly duplicitous. Yeah, he's constantly diving and scheming and doing all sorts of
But would
tricks.
he give his boots to someone else and then regret it during the game later?
Yeah, I don't know. Well,
And then
yeah, if he refused to play for Man United.
he gave someone else his boots.
Yeah.
And then like extra time ran on and be like, oh no, I should actually make a difference.
Yeah, he refuses to play. His friend goes on and gets slain by Roy Keane. And then he thinks, oh, I should have gone on. But actually, he does have that moment. It's quite interesting because Cristiano Ronaldo, I don't know which one it was. I think it was the 2004 European Championship. There's a penalty shootout, and Cristiano Ronaldo decides to go for the last penalty, which is the most glorious penalty of all the penalties. But he never gets a chance to take that penalty because Portugal are out before he's had that opportunity.
Oh.
So his pride and his strive to glory takes away victory for the entire team.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to the World Cup, and he decides to take the first penalty, or it might be another European Championship. He takes the first one, Portugal win. Yeah. But there are parallels. I think we might be giving Ronaldo, but I can't get enough of Ronaldo.
It's interesting. Yeah,
It's too much, the story. Yeah.
I think Achilles should have made some wiser decisions earlier on about giving his armor away and engaging in the war.
Yeah, he should have fought.
Those would have solved a lot of his.
He should have fought for the men. I think he should have fought for the men. It was his personal.
Why did he decide not to? He was bored of it.
He was so annoyed that Agamemnon had taken the girl that he wanted, and that he felt was his.
Yeah.
That he refused to fight. Yeah,
Ridiculous.
there's no camaraderie there.
Yeah.
No camaraderie. Yeah, and that's merit status. How are we doing? How? Gosh, we've done really well, guys. Yeah. I think we're actually very, very close to the end of this Soulday Thursday. Yeah, we've just got a few more minutes, and I'm going to see whether there's any questions that we haven't discussed. Glory, happiness, we've done. Honesty, best policy, done. Should we give set through the work home or in the office? We've discussed all of these points.
Maybe it's not why it's less important.
Oh, we haven't done hosting. Have we not done hosting?
No.
Okay, we've got. Well, it's quite good to end on hosting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a warm way to end, and it was actually how I was planning on. Yeah, but we've got a professional host.
Oh, you're a host.
Yours.
No, that's
No,
sure.
you might have yours.
Yeah, you're a host. Yeah.
I mean,
Why is hosting important?
Please tell us.
why is hosting important? I don't know. I love hosting, but I guess it's the sharing. Sharing experience with other people, and
Facilitating
show up.
New connections.
Facilitating new connection, also welcome people without distrust. Even if you don't know them very well. So I guess it's a sign of trust in humanity. Maybe a bit much, but I guess so. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that idea of the trust, because that's what Menelaus is like. He meets Telemachus and he immediately goes, "Look, enough about who you are. We'll deal with that later. For now, let's have this lovely dinner that I'm going to put on for you." Yeah, it's an assumption of the shared humanity, and shared values. I say. What do you reckon, Jamie? As a professional host?
Well, really, yeah. I mean, it's really hard to put it into words. Just it feels like it's serving a purpose, kind of bringing. As a host, you're bringing people together to connect with each other, not with yourself, but just with one another. And if you hadn't done that, then they would never have connected. For the procreation of humanity, those gatherings are the thing that
Crucial, yeah.
it's crucial, but it's really hard to put it into words. Why it's important. Your soul gets filled from that moment. From that happening. But yeah, I can't really quantify it, unfortunately.
What do you reckon, Rosa?
I'd agree. I don't have much to add, I don't think.
Yeah. What do you reckon, Isabella?
I don't know. It's a moment of, as you say, where I guess you put away your differences and you come together in the name of food and connection and human connection, and food can be the excuse, or drink can be the excuse, or conversation and exchange, or all these things together can be the excuse, and I guess sometimes you have this sort of unmediated connection with other humans where under the excuse of just connecting in the context of whatever food, or you just come together because sometimes you just want to simply connect with people. And hosting is important. It is in our culture. We're Italian. It's in many other cultures, in the British culture, or I don't know. So I thought you were Italian.
Pepperoni, yeah,
Okay.
whatever my name is.
No, I love Beviano because people do.
Pepperoni.
It does remind me of Joey Tribbiani, but are you Italian?
Yeah.
You are, okay. So you've got Italian heritage. It's incredibly important. In any culture, it's incredibly important to treat your guests really well. And why? I don't know.
I think it's the trust thing. You put off your guards and you're like, okay, now we're together, and you decide to show up to other people.
It's kind of legacy.
What do you reckon,
well.
Yeah, I think trust, but also I think each person's in a unique situation, a unique position to kind of invite each of their friends to meet other friends. So in that sense, each person can host something and make it very natural for different people to meet. And then someone else of the same group, but maybe has different extensions of the group or groups, can also then host. And then it's a way of just people meeting people, which is different from just the same group of people meeting.
It's like it's got an evolutionary purpose, doesn't it? It's actually,
I think it is. It's the trust, and then it's the amplification of trust through other people coming together. And I like the idea when you throw a house party and there's, say, several people in the house, you've got all of these different characters, and then they all, by virtue of knowing the house, trust one another.
Yeah.
And also everyone else does, once there's a bit of effort, like tonight, putting some sushi, which was an absolute most minimum effort you can put into hosting.
So good.
Once there's sushi on there, then people arrive, and the energy comes from everyone collectively, which I really like.
And there is an element of glory, like the heroes we're talking about. That when you're a gracious host, there is this legacy.
It's not
of
for
glory.
yourself because you're stressful, you're stressed. But actually, you're getting this other thing of knowing other people are getting happiness from it.
Right.
It's actually such a good analogy. Yeah.
I've started to realise that birthdays are a good reason to, when it's your birthday, put on an event or like host people, is just because that makes kind of like.
No, it makes me laugh because you realise it's a surprise party that you didn't organise.
I haven't really lived this realization yet, but I'm slowly realizing that the most important thing about people hosting birthdays is not that they necessarily find their own birthday the most enjoyable time of the year, because it's a bit of a ball ache to organise everyone and host lots of different conversations with people who don't know each other, but actually everyone throughout the year hosting their own thing means that I guess they do get a bit of glory, but also it's like you are taking the burden or the effort on bringing people together.
That's
like
so true. So true.
Otherwise they wouldn't connect and they wouldn't get together.
Exactly.
Because if everyone just takes equal responsibility and is on a group organising a pub visit, eventually the same thing replicating itself again and again throughout the year is just less effective than one person being like, this is my thing, everyone go.
And you know when there's two different friends from different groups and you bring them together and the only time they saw each other was the last time it was your birthday, and you're like, they're like connecting again because of.
But you're able to hear them actually remembering the conversations, being like, yes, this was great.
Exactly.
Maybe next time we'll just make an agreement to meet up.
And then over time the trust is built enough to then meet outside of that circle.
Well, that's also linked to your office thing of working in the office. I think it's number 1 or 2 place where people meet before they get married, as in like husband and wives meet at work. So to lose that, in society and make people work from home is a massive loss from a sort of connectivity thing in between people.
That is a good point, because it's often people who are married or in relationships are more keen to have them working from home. Because they've already found someone.
They've done that,
and they're settled. But,
that's it. What happens to single people who are working from home?
It's fucking
sad. You're not meeting anymore. You're only outlet now are apps.
Which is
sad.
Go from Zoom to
Tinder. It's just like working Tinder.
Oh, guys, we've come to the
end. You up and you work with some people.
We've come to the end.
Is that an idea?
No, I've just come up with it now.
Thank you to everyone who joined the live stream. A special thank you to Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
For helping build the conversation.
Robust classics knowledge.
For helping. Wait, I should add myself to the stream. So thank you. Thank you very much. And do you guys want to join the stream for a second? We say a quick goodbye to the 5 people. It's quite fun.
Oh.
Yeah, we'll just say a quick goodbye. Okay.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Nice to see you.
I know. So I was like, oh fuck, I'm not that small.
No, it's on the other side.